yesterday we were,
Say it louder, dear.
when we went to the city for your speaking engagement, it was an eventful.
Yes, yeah. That was, I prayed to God he'd smooth our way, and I've never seen such a light traffic.
Oh, that's great.
All the
Yeah,
way
we were
in on
there.
Wednesday night.
Yeah.
We got there in 50 minutes.
Wow.
At the height of rush hour, 4:30
That's
to
great.
5:30.
That's great. Sometimes it's just totally unpredictable.
I know.
All right. So, is there anything else on conducting yourself in the interview, or do you want to jump to?
Well, there's salary negotiation. of
Okay.
course.
So, yes. Better remember than I do. All right. Hang on a second. I'm just gonna. Yeah, we just lost a little bit of height there. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Bowles, what should we know? So we're in the interview, and we finally reached the topic of salary negotiation. What is
You can't assume that.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes the employer will raise it immediately.
Okay. So
What kind of salary are you looking for?
right, exactly. All right. So give us some tips on salary negotiation.
Salary negotiation is going to take place hopefully sometime during the interview. The employer often will try to rush that. They'll try to weed out who they have to spend any time with by using as the deciding factor how much of a salary they're looking for. And if it's way above what the employer has in mind, that they are spared another 20 minutes of interviewing you. They simply say, we can't offer a position at that rate.
All right, Dad. I'm sorry. I hit that tripod. Can you start all over again on that one? So yeah, my bad on that one. I didn't realize I was so close to it. So okay. So again,
Once you're in the interview, you have to be weighing from the very beginning what you're going to do about salary negotiation. It's got to come up. If you don't bring it up, you're going to be very, very painfully aware you should have when you see your first paycheck. So, what you need to know, first of all, is what is it they typically pay in a place like the place you're approaching. There are websites like salary.com and others where you often can find information, not necessarily about that one particular place that you're targeting, but certainly about the industry or about the geographical area, and you can learn what the ranges tend to be that they offer as a salary for. Say you are an accountant, you can find out what typically an accountant is paid in the Bay Area if they're a beginning accountant, intermediate accountant, or very advanced and experienced. So you want to do that research because you've got to know what's realistic. When salary negotiation comes up in the interview, many employers use it as a way to find out if you really know what you're talking about. Are you really a professional? If you mention a figure when they ask you how much you were expecting, if you mention a figure that's so outrageous that not even in the ballpark, they will use that to criticize and critique you for all the other skills you're trying to talk about. Say maybe they're unrealistic about those too. So it's essential to do what research you can using the internet before you approach the place, by industry or by geography, as I mentioned. Now the question is, when in the interview should that issue of salary negotiation come up? Employers tend to want it to come up earlier, as I mentioned. Job hunters tend to want it to come up as late as possible in the interview. The reason? Because by then, the employer has a chance to see how wonderful you are, how extraordinary you are, how you're not the typical accountant or the typical whatever is the position that you're trying to get. So unless they've had a chance to see you're absolutely unique, or you're a standout, or you're a star in some aspect of the field or the job you're looking at, they'll always mention the lowest figure. So you want the longest time possible for them to get a look at you, see, well, this person is really somebody I really, really would like to have. And then if they conclude that, then that's the appropriate time to talk about salary. Experts on salary negotiations say, not when they are thinking, I'd maybe like to hire this person, but when they're thinking, I've got to get this person, is the appropriate moment for salary negotiation. When that comes up, there's a silly rule, which happens to be pretty accurate. Whoever mentions a figure first, boss or you, whoever mentions a salary figure first loses. Because you are going to be talking about a range. You want to fall high in that range that the employer has in mind. The employer wants you to fall as low in that range so they can save as much money as they possibly can. So when the employer asks you, and how much did you think you would deserve or need to have for this position, they're hoping you'll mention a figure, because many of them do know that silly rule. I say silly because it sounds silly, but it isn't silly. It actually is pretty true. So you want to turn the tables back to them. You want to say, well, you created this position, how much did you have in mind? Because then the ballpark is in their corner, and they, whatever, I just made a mixed metaphor. Because then it's in their corner and they have to come up with a figure. Therefore, they're the first to mention a figure. You can negotiate from there. Well, given that I intend to bring in 20% more profit, and I really think I can, than you had with the previous person, I think I deserve a salary that's 20% higher. I deserve a larger share of what I can bring into this company. You can talk in terms of benefits to them, not just in terms of salary. Salary is the cost to them, but you want to talk about your salary figure in terms of benefits, that you're going to bring in some business, you're going to bring in new customers, you're going to do whatever it is they most need to have done. So do the research, delay all discussion. Now, suppose you run into an obstinate boss. He says, when you're seated, this is the person that has the power to hire you at that place. They say, well, yes, we do have a vacancy, but first of all, I need to know how much you're expecting. And you say, well, I think that we need to discuss more what the position is before I can give an honest answer to that. And they say, no, don't play games with me. I want to know, you're coming here hoping we're going to pay you, hire you. How much do you want us to pay you? And if they're adamant and they won't be put off by any strategy like, I need to know more about the job first and that sort of thing, you have to reconcile yourself to the fact you may be talking to an employer you don't want to work for. This is a person who is rigid, and doesn't think that it's worth listening to people. They want to shut off the interview as early as possible. You have to ask yourself, is this the kind of place I really want to work for? In other words, we're back to our principle. The interview is always two of you looking at each other, trying to see, in a sense, it's most analogous to high school, and do we want to go steady for a while? Do we want to see if we want to go steady? And therefore, you have the right to look at the employer and say, I'm not this desperate. In this tough economy, it's hard to know that. People who have gone through my course over many, many years would go back home, and I remember one in particular was from Baltimore, Maryland. I said, what difference did the course make in your life? And they said, I turned down the first two jobs I was offered because I knew they weren't the place where I should be. I would never have dared be so picky if I hadn't gone through this self-inventory. But since I did, I realize I'm valuable. I realize I would be an asset to any company that hired me. So I don't need to take the first offer that comes down the road to me. I can wait because I'll find somebody that values me for what I'm worth. So when the employer insists on bringing up salary negotiation early in the discussion, take that as part of the data you're trying to collect. Is this the kind of place I'd like to work for? Most employers will be amenable to your suggestion, tell me more about the job, so that I can then see what it is that I have to offer, and then I can tell you what I value my services and my expertise at.
Excellent.
Can I get you water? So your voice
Yeah, would you mind?
is getting weaker.
I was looking for a home for a frog.